The Bring a Trailer Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bring a Trailer Podcast. My name is Alex Porter, and I am joined around the mics once again by Zach and Beck. What's up, boys?
Hey, nice to see you, Alex.
Great to see you, too. It's been a little bit. You've been in New York. We've got some things to talk about.
I've really dropped the ball on my travel schedule this year. I feel like I've missed every great BAT moment of 2025 because I'm always in the wrong town.
Man, I wish you were at the Cal Melee start on Monday.
I missed the Melee start. I missed Arizona. I missed LA. I've missed the podcast.
That's right.
You did the Modern Performance podcast.
That's right.
Without me.
That's right.
Which was actually a pretty crushing blow.
People really liked it, actually. It was surprising how much feedback we got on it. People mentioned a couple. I wish I could remember. There was G8. One of the things, that's a shout out to a listener. I wish I could remember their name, but we missed the Pontiac G8 and the GTO, which are
GTO
really good.
is such a strong
It's
pick.
a really smart one. Did you have any other ones that you thought of?
I'll circle back to you on that. I can pull up a list, I'm sure.
Part of Zach being out means he's seated second chair to you, Beck. How does that feel?
It feels good. I like having Zach in the office. It's not often enough. I feel like we've been missing out on you, man.
Sorry, yeah, just my quiet, frantic typing up until 5 p.m. and a complaint about half those music here and there in between.
Perfect. Don't worry, I doubt she listens to the podcast, but if she does, we'll let that be the feedback for her.
I don't think she listens to anything but 70s glam rock, right?
It's fantastic.
Just like some mood music going down there.
Totally. We've had some interesting playlists on at HQ recently. Interestingly, I was thinking about this before we started recording. We're all having birthdays right around now. Mine is upcoming. Zach's is right upon us, and Beck just had his. You had the big one, buddy.
I had the big one. I had a big round number just a couple weeks ago, the big 4-0.
Big 4-0 for Beck.
Well,
did you know that, Zach?
Well, I've actually been dreading this birthday.
Oh.
I don't mean to steal your thunder, Beck, but I am turning the exact age that when I met you, Alex.
Oh, yes, when you're called middle age.
And I looked you in the eye and said, oh, you're officially middle-aged.
Yep.
And you were so deflated.
Correct. I still think about that a lot.
Well, I think about that too. And here I am, officially middle-aged.
Well, I'm about to turn 42. So that was almost a decade ago that you told me that. I got this job when I was 32. So there we go.
I thought you were 33 when you started.
I turned 33 right around when I started. I started 9 years ago in May. So I started in May of 2016. So that day when Randy called me in Vegas, when I was all hungover to tell me that I had the job, that was when I was still
sprightly
32.
Young Alex Porter.
More sprightly than now, that's for sure.
I've been watching your regression over the past 9 years, and now I'm afraid I'm on that track as well.
The number of times Alex has slapped his own tummy and just said, LBs, baby.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know.
I hope that made it over the mics.
Fortunately, Beck is basically not aged since the day I met him. So
Totally. And also, you're in the opposite place and space, exercise-wise, than me. So I think you're going to be fine.
Great plastic surgeon. My hair plugs, they're pretty seamless.
Beck, you did go on a little drive as part of your 40th with Robert. Zach, shout out Robert, our wonderful former colleague.
Yeah, it was opportunity, just a day off, which is rare for me on the weekend. So did one of my favorite drives possible is up to Tamales Bay and invited out Robert to come. I was really hoping he was going to bring his 914, but unfortunately it's got a few issues, so he wasn't able to do that. But he brought out the Corolla, which I love actually following that car. It sounds fantastic. And just watching him drive is just so joyful because he's so ridiculously good at it. And he smokes you, even though you're in a car that's supposedly twice as powerful as his. And he did a wonderful job sort of leading me along. We went to Tamales Bay. We got some oysters, drove through Sonoma County, back home by 3. But it was good to stretch the legs of my car, which I haven't really done since before winter. I had some work on it, exhaust backdate, sort of more of a proper 911 sound, a lot of air-cooled sounds coming out of that thing now that was a little more stifled before. So it was fantastic. I had absolute joy with him.
Robert can drive that way because unlike you, he has no family.
No children, no heirs to leave behind.
Nothing.
Yeah.
In my co-pilot seat, was my buddy Ian, who also has a small child and also was just, I think, grabbing the door handle the entire time. As I'm just like, we're trying to keep up with Robert. And then there's times where you go through, like, if you're on Highway 1 by Tamales Bay, every now and then you have to sort of turn right into a cove and you'll come back. And we would approach one of those coves and I would see Robert's taillights flicker on, then he would dive to the right and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to turn around this and I'll see him soon. But before I can do that, I see them in the distance coming out of the cove. Like he's already made his all
Hachiroku and just drifting in every corner there.
Totally. That was the same place where I went on the first BAT company driver I ever went on with Zach and Howard. Remember that? We went out there.
Howard drove my GT3 and he got out and he said, I think it would be safer for you to buy a gun than this car.
I forgot about that. That's amazing. That car was
like, I can't believe he didn't know how mentally unstable I was.
Not very sensitive of him. We were just talking about that in the office. I think you and me the other day, Beck. That was a remarkably fast car.
Your motor in the 912 was just built.
That's right.
That was your first day out. The carbs are super rich.
Yeah, remember, it wasn't running very well, but it was fine at wide open throttle. So there was a lot of
assuming that it
throttle.
has run well at some point.
Yeah. Well, I had a single advanced distributor back then. It was more racy back then. I've kind of detuned it to make it more reliable.
And then I love that I can say this. And Howard was driving his mom's Cayman.
That's right.
Base Cayman.
That's right.
That was our crew.
He was very fast. It was very hard to keep up with him. It was maybe a little bit of a dick measuring there early on. I don't know.
Is the base Cayman the 912E of the modern Porsche era?
Thank God Howard, even though he's our boss and kind of the original podcast host, also probably doesn't listen to the podcast. So we can say, yes, confirm. Unless it's a Macan? No, it would be the base Cayman as the 912.
The 718 came in with the four-cylinder.
The first gen base came in 06. They just debuted the S. In 07, they brought the base, and it had a Volkswagen 5-speed.
Oh, that's
it didn't
right.
even have a Porsche gearbox in it.
There you go. It really is. It's like the opposite of my car, which has a Volkswagen engine, but a Porsche gearbox.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, now that we're all...
Wait, hold on. Before, have you done any New York car stuff?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because it'll be short. But I'm hung up on us all collectively being middle-aged and coming to terms with it. And I wonder if your taste or preference in cars have changed at all since you've come to grips with your own aging and mortality.
Great question. I don't think I've come to grips with mine. Beck is so much more well-adjusted. He'll be fine. My tastes have changed because of BAT primarily.
That's what I was going to say. It's tough to isolate specifically my age change in reference to my car taste versus just my experience being far more diverse now than it was prior to BAT. It was so brand specific. And so to be in this space and on BAT every day, that's had a far larger influence, which of course comes with time as well. This is my 8-year anniversary with BAT. And so it's been almost identical age in there. I guess what it would come down to is my willingness to take risks on cars is lower. Like when I had my old 02, I drove it without a headliner. And
you started at the top, Beck. You had an Alfa Milano.
I had an Alfa, yes.
Donated to you.
All been
That's
done
as
now.
risky as possible.
I paid $600 for that car. Although he did end up giving me some money back because I think he wrote it off as a junk car that he was like donating for parts. But yes, it was all uphill from there, I guess, really. But yeah, it's your willingness to sort of go with some of the junkier aspects of project cars goes downhill, right? I remember in that 02 at one point, I drove it without a windscreen trying to take it to a headliner shop. Like, I don't think I'd do that anymore. That's, I think, the middle-agedness that comes out.
Having kids and like a lot of other burdens also doesn't help with that, because I've also gotten way softer with cars. Like I remember having a point, I was probably around 30 or maybe in my early 30s. I used to be a mechanic a long time ago, as you guys know. And there was a point where I was like, why would you ever pay somebody to change your oil? Like, I'm not going to do heavy maintenance on my cars anymore. As when I had my Mark V GTI, I was like, but I'm definitely always going to change my own oil. And like, that's out the window. I pay people to do every aspect of all of it.
For you, Alex, that I think about all the time is how many miles you put on your S2000.
120,000.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a ton, because you're doing a lot of distance driving.
I was dating my now wife then, and she lived in Northern California and I lived in Central California. So almost every weekend I would do, I think it was 370 miles each way. So I would do over 700 miles every weekend in that car. And I did that for like a year.
And as I age, I have less tolerance for a car like that over distance.
That's so interesting.
Fuzzy, loud, a little cramped. I'll still do it, but I was fantasizing about getting another S2000. Well, obviously, when I was fantasizing about reliving my youth,
totally,
just the other week.
Yeah.
And then
now that you're middle aged,
I thought about the few trips I took to and from LA in it. I was like, nah, I don't know if I can do that again.
It's interesting you say that. So the NSX is such a good long distance car. Coming up on my 42nd year, and I really want to take a road trip. And now that I've sold that car, I don't want to do it in the green Porsche or the yellow Porsche. The green Porsche, because I like air conditioning and cruise control. That's definitely something that's changed, right? For a long trip, at least. And even though, ironically, I was in here talking to Randy and Robbie about how great it feels to drive an old car a couple hundred miles and you really feel like you've accomplished something. But if you want to go on like an enjoyable road trip where you're just trying to relax.
Lying. You're just...
Well, the last time I did that was with you. I referenced it. It was when we did the Motherload. Remember when it was like 110 degrees in the green car?
Yeah.
I think that was the Motherload rally. That was probably like 6 years ago.
You got to road trip the NSX to Scottsdale,
which was fantastic. Zach and I both dueling NSXs. It was, I mean, that was
the last time I've driven my NSX.
It was so good, dude. It was so good. Those cars are a good mix of feeling a little bit old and vintage, but also like having the modern comforts. But like the GT3 is like not very pleasant on a road trip. Like it doesn't have any on-center feel. It tram lines. It's like a little too stiff. I mean,
996 GT3 problems.
I think that's right. I think a 997 fixes a lot of that for sure.
That car's fantastic.
Totally. But like, I mean, I also appreciate those things about it. I just don't want to take it on a road trip, right? So that is something that's changed, right? I want a little more comfort on my road trip car.
But so neither of you have leaned into the midlife crisis stereotype of, I guess Alex kind of when you bought your yellow GT3, but nothing super flashy, fast, out of character. Kind of stayed in your lanes.
Yeah. And now I feel, even though I know this sounds like I'm backtracking, like I need to get another old car. Like I need more legitimacy of having an actual old
Two
car.
cords isn't enough for you?
Dude, I'm tempted to buy that 34 Ford that didn't sell the other day, Peter Egan's car. Anyway, 3 cars from the 30s is insane.
The practicality of having children in the city keeps me pretty well grounded. While I do long for something flashy like that. I mean, I've been looking at, there's a great blue 356A project on the site right now that would have been something I would have totally jumped over pre-kids, but nowadays, no. I'm looking at W212 wagons with third rows now. That's my main
That's like the opposite of a midlife crisis. It is a crisis that happens in your middle age, but it's a different one.
Right.
The Beck's onto the acceptance stage of the reading cycle.
That's what I said. He's more well adjusted. He's doing better.
If you have your opportunity to, I think, express those needs earlier on, which I've done in some cars, maybe not the classically thought of as cars for that, you don't have that like concern of, oh no, I'm halfway through life. I have to go buy that thing right now. So it hasn't really hit me.
I have those fears all the time. And what they actually direct me towards wanting to do, like not car stuff necessarily, maybe things that are car adjacent, but just like, try to enjoy life, like try to go do the things. It's mostly experiential, like go do the things I want to do. Like you and Randy getting into racing, right? Like that makes me want to go back and do it. Somebody was just talking about airplane stuff again the other day, right? And I was like, man, maybe I should get back into flying. Like 2 things that I haven't done in forever. Maybe I would remember why I stopped doing both those things, but it's like that kind of stuff that's calling to me as I worry about getting older and older. Totally. And like, yeah, being up in the sky again or being on a racetrack again, right?
I mean, your chat with Robbie in the last podcast was like, so kind of inspirational, but also heartbreaking for me. I've actually never been on like an overnight rally drive like that before.
Dude.
And I've wanted to for so long.
Perfect for it.
It would be. I would love to do it. It's just a matter of like fitting it into everything else and hearing people talk about it. And you think about, man, the experiences of using the car, not just looking at the cars anymore. We talked about this in the office where notifications of new unnamed car shows that come up that used to be very, very super popular. And we all sort of talked about going there. Now we just archive that email as it comes in and we're looking for what's something to actually do in the car.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was pretty inspirational just hearing you guys talk about all that.
Made me want to get out on the road again too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been doing the opposite, hanging around New York City. Pretty content.
Totally. Not using a car at all.
No, it's actually fantastic.
But don't you think, so that's interesting. Like you'll hear car people sometimes say, oh, you know, anything that infringes on the car, like hurts the car hobby. And I don't agree. I actually think if you have to use a car every day as a tool, it can sometimes reduce the love of the car. There's a world in which riding the subway every day makes it more special to hop in a special car on the weekend.
Right around like week 3 or so, I have like a deep craving to go drive a car. It just sounds so fun and I'm so excited about it. And it is funny when I come back to the Bay Area and I've got to drive. Driving in the SF area is like driving on track where you got to live in your mirrors and you got to like take passes as you can, but still move with the flow of traffic, weave in and out. So it's very strategic and I get a little rusty.
No, totally. It's definitely a skill set, right? Like doing it, or it's like a mentality. Like in our neighborhood, you just have to assume nobody is going to stop at a stop sign ever.
Correct. I actually drove in New York a long time ago. I was there for spring break, like junior year in college, and drove my E30 all the way from Chicago to New York. And I street parked it in Manhattan while staying with a friend. And I got a ton of parking tickets just assuming that they're never going to get me. I don't live here. And they end up mailing them all to me. But
wow, that plan really fell
totally
apart
backfired.
immediately.
But I loved it. I loved driving in Manhattan. I loved it. Like before the light had turned green, there was already 3 cars behind you honking. And it was just it was almost borderline bumper cars as far as how you're getting around town.
Well, it's not an act of warfare out there. Like it's so much more casual just to honk.
It's the European style of honking. It's to let you know, hey, I'm here, as opposed to here it's I hate you.
There's a little bit of word we'd have to bleep out on the podcast. It's a little different than the European style, but people definitely aren't as aggressive out there because there are so many pedestrians. You'll definitely maul someone. So
yeah, we leave that to the bicycle riders here in San Francisco. They're the ones mauling people.
But it is funny when you're out in New York City in particular, a lot of the cars are kind of homogenous. There's a lot of Nissan Rogues, a lot of Toyota Camrys, a lot of grayscale. And if you see like a base 997 out there, all of a sudden it looks like an exotic car. So it helps you appreciate.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or if you see a 2002 or a FJ62, it looks so special, and the city's such a good backdrop for that stuff.
I often wonder about that if we get jaded in California, or particularly in LA or San Francisco, right? Where there's like old cars all the time.
Feels way different. There was a guy wrenching on his E36 M3 on the streets of the East Village, just right there. It's like, oh, it's so cool. There's this perfect tree in bloom right behind it. And that feels like such a sports car out there in the way that here we just kind of glaze over.
Totally. That's like a cheap used car, E36 M3. That's somebody's using it as transportation. Any other interesting stuff out in the East Coast?
I went to an event that Anthony was sponsoring at the Sarah 1600 Veloce. I wasn't there that long, but it was kind of a hybrid DJ warehouse, food and drink. Yes. Oh, yeah. You nailed it. How'd you pull that sample up so quick?
Totally.
There's some cool stuff. I mean, Anthony's Countach is fantastic. He had a great R5 non-turbo. Hilarious. Just perfect condition. You sit down, the pedals are all off to the side. And yeah, that was cool to see. There was some really interesting modified F355 that had this glass cover like they do with the later cars. Some trucks. Yeah, good G-Wagons. There was a huge Integra Type R, RSX. That whole scene slammed.
Nice.
Carbon hood. Blast from my past. Very Fast and the Furious era where I feel like I'm always wondering where all those cars went. And they were there. So that was nice to see.
Underglow?
Sadly, daytime, I wasn't sure. But I'm kind of down to bring back Underglow. Where do you guys stand?
I think for those kinds of cars, yes.
And the technology's improved dramatically. It's no longer like actual neon tubes. It's all LEDs. I've seen those strapped to like the underside of the frame.
There's probably, I mean, this shows what I know about car culture. It's probably already happening. There's probably like a latter day nostalgia for those, and somebody might build something new in 90s style, right? Like where you could reinterpret a previous, like the thing I'm thinking of is conversion vans, like kind of had a second wave, right? Like 70s conversion vans had a second wave of popularity.
I'm thinking 1980s full fuzzy dice era, like horrible candy apple red 34 Fords. I've been waiting for people to bring that back, but with Integra GSRs and just put 6 wild JLs in the trunk with that custom fiberglass volcano
just
looking
a huge, like 6-inch tip on the exhaust, just gigantic.
NOS canister right behind the e-brake. Where is that?
Totally.
Why did that all die out?
Totally. I'm sure there's nostalgia for it out there. Gosh, where did I read this the other day? There's like a little cult group somewhere that's like bringing back the mini truck culture, which is kind of like adjacent to that, like the slammed on hydraulics mini trucks, right?
You're talking like JDM mini trucks?
Yeah, well, do you remember, well, maybe...
Are you talking S10 shape bumper on
all that program, right? Like 90s, like Mighty Mouses and like, you know, the little Toyota quarter-ton mini trucks that were slammed, and sometimes they would have, they'd often have, I guess they were airbags or maybe even hydraulics if you go back far enough. But yeah, like wheels completely tucked up into the back. Maybe even, I think the fender wells in the bed cut away so that you can get the wheels all the way out.
And that one custom tailgate with the
angled license plate. 100%. 100%. But yeah, it was like lowrider style shaved door handles everywhere, right? Poppers for everything. And definitely some big subwoofers somewhere. I don't know where you fit them in those.
Yeah, I think you had to get the extended cab that would have the 2 seats behind the driver that face in.
Correct.
And then you do the custom sub enclosure back there.
That's exactly right. That's great. I love that.
Man, you guys have taken me back.
I know. I love all that stuff.
Back to my youth.
That's
theme
right.
Of the podcast.
That's right. It is. This is about middle age and accepting it or not.
Well, I did, in fact, buy a good midlife crisis car that I'll show you when I get to Wisconsin in it.
Oh, that's what you're going to drive from New York to Wisconsin? Oh, my gosh. Really? But you won't reveal it here?
No, I'll share in a couple months.
Oh, man, I'm excited. Zach always does that.
That is a phenomenal skill to have. I can't hold stuff in.
I hold no information. People, it's just out there. I've been told I say too much. I wanted to talk curation a little bit, Zach, since we've got you. But before we do that, you want to do a little Leno's Law update? You teased this earlier.
Sure.
My wife, who works for the state of California, as you both know, and has kind of a DMV adjacent role as an attorney, she said that it's probably dead. And you said, yes, that's probably true.
Possibly dead.
Okay.
We discussed this a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 podcasts ago. SB 712 for California, which is going to change the smog testing rules, which is something that is talked about around car enthusiast tables sort of constantly.
Which we would all love.
We would all love some understanding and some change in that world. Basically, the rule would change it so it wouldn't be from a hard start at 1976. It would make it a rule.
It would go back to rolling the way it was.
35 years. It went into appropriations because they determined that it would cost more than $50,000 in order to implement, which I feel like it costs $50,000 to like have a government meeting, right? So like that seems like
how is there not a GoFundMe already?
Totally.
And then there's like no discussion of like, I don't think it has to do with revenue. So even though someone could argue that there'd be more revenue due to registrations, it doesn't matter. It's all just about what it would cost to implement. And so in the appropriations, certain organizations are allowed to come forward and essentially say why they think this would cost a bunch of money or why it wouldn't cost a bunch of money. And weirdly, only like one person spoke at it, and it was someone essentially representing Air Resource Board. And they basically said that they think it will be very expensive to implement with no evidence, no explanation whatsoever. And then nobody was there in defense of it, which seemed really odd. And so the bill went into what they call suspense, which is basically they put it at the end of the desk and it gets put in a large stack. And the only way it can come back out is if the chairperson says, you know what, let's bring this one back out and talk about it again.
Well, now I'm in suspense, Beck.
I know. No. We're all in suspense. If you live in District 14, which is
where?
Merced County, like in the Central Valley, the chairwoman who runs appropriations, Senator Ana Calvero, I would highly recommend reaching out to her, especially if your representative is on that board. It would probably be a good thing to reach out to. But that's the person.
Especially if you own a car from 1976.
And the first thing I'm going to do after we wrap this podcast is check to see if she has a BAT user account.
She's been bidding on 1974, 75 cars this entire time just to skirt it.
Yep, that's right.
So that's unfortunate.
Well, that's a damn shame.
It's not impossible. Like virtually most bills do.
Well, there was one of these. What was it? AB 550. There was one of these a couple of years ago. Correct. So this gets brought up every couple of years.
This definitely got the most fanfare entirely because of Jay Leno. I think that was a big one. So, and this also was the least sort of giveaway. It was 35 years. It's still a long period of time. There was times where they were trying to just move it hard to 81, or they were trying to bring it back to a 25-year rolling. This is honestly probably the most even ground for it, but unfortunately,
this might be the formula for future success, even if this one's not.
Yep.
Then I can finally buy a carbureted 77 308 GTB.
And then I can finally register my M3.
Exactly right. I think wasn't one of Jay Leno's points. It's like you're missing out on registration.
Which now is probably the worst combination of events where he's blown up everybody's spot with the Montana LLC, and they'll just crack down on that, but then not fix the smog rules. So thanks for ruining it for everyone.
Yep.
So we'll report back if there's any updates, but it sounds like it's going to be a slow roll from here.
That's a bummer. I'm really bummed out about that. Okay, Zach, well, we've got you. Don't like to miss an opportunity to talk a little bit about curation. You oversee our curation team, and those folks are deciding which cars come onto the website. And so it's obviously one of the number one things we get asked about is, what cars do we take? What cars do we not take? And so I was wondering if you could give us an update on how you and your staffers, your team, are thinking about, maybe this is the best way to phrase it. What's the best way for somebody who wants to make sure their car gets accepted? What's the best way for them to attract your attention or any of the curators on your team?
Most of it's just common sense. Be polite. You don't have to go all out with your initial presentation, but take some quality photos of the car with it in the full frame of the shot so we can properly evaluate it. If you're coming in with quick pics that are just preliminary, just say that. And then anything else we know, then we know your presentation is going to be better than you're coming in with. If you're going to request a reserve that's less than $5,000, just don't do that. That's a big one. People that want sort of menial reserves on otherwise average to good cars, most of that stuff we're going to push for no reserve anyway, or accept a contingent on no reserve, and the car's going to do better.
Totally.
So, we see that more on like mini bikes and signs, and usually that's a pretty quick decision when we see someone wants a reserve on one that it's not going to be a fit.
Yeah. Any notable trends you're seeing, kinds of cars that you're seeing come in that you didn't used to, or cars that you don't see as much as you used to?
The ones I keep the closest tabs on not seeing as much are the ones that I want for myself personally, because I go, man, it's been a while since we saw a good 2000 GT Toyota.
Oh, great call.
I know.
My favorite car.
Yep, up there.
That's a hold right now. I guess people are holding on to them.
Yeah, but trends, I mean, have obviously shifted the last 5 years to a lot more modern stuff, which is great, and we love it. There's fewer cars that people were speculating on a bunch over the pandemic now that things have leveled out, evened out. A lot less Hummer EVs now that those are, worthless, plummeting hard. Yeah.
Cybertrucks.
Yeah, poor Randy and his Rivian's probably going to take a beating. It's good news here now. So yeah, a lot of the EVs we're seeing at higher volume have cooled off a bit. I'm pretty surprised we haven't seen more ID buzzes, honestly, because I think they're pretty sweet.
We haven't listed one yet.
I don't think they've been selling them new that well, though. I think
that's why I'm surprised.
Right.
Do you think these Volkswagen dealers would
I've only seen one in person. Have you guys seen any in person?
I saw one.
I've not seen one of the ones.
Yeah. I saw one down by Ocean Beach, which was like total natural element. Like that's exactly where it fitted. It was like blue and white two-tone.
I'm excited about those.
Yeah, they're cool.
Good job. Yeah, we listed one in Fed, but that's pretty much the only one we've seen.
Okay. Beck, similar question for you. What's white glove submissions? Lots of Ford GTs. That's what you're saying.
We're always Ford GT land. I mean, Roland is our second gen Ford GT expert. I think he has a ridiculous sale percentage on those. We're starting to see, I think, sellers be a bit more understanding. They're a bit more educated from what's happened since the height of the pandemic. They're not maybe in the disbelief in like 23, 24, wondering why their Bronco Resto Mod build isn't selling for $200, $250K anymore. They're a little bit coming in the door. They sometimes even self-admit, like, I know I didn't do a great job at this. Can you help? How can you help me out?
Yeah, Coyote Power
in every headline. That's been a nice relief. To Zach's point, I want to bring up we're not just always reviewing the car, right? You're reviewing sort of the demeanor of the person as they submit the car, because we are also trying to protect the community and protect our own employees too. And there's unfortunately a few times where that's not always the case when that first submission comes through. And it's also really easy, I think, sometimes to forget that there are people reviewing this. Like every one of those submissions is reviewed by a real person, and they're making a real decision based off of the data that they see, but also just their personal experience. And I think them seeing that the person who's submitting the car or the part or whatever it might be is really caring about the item, and they're not blaming BAT for this submission page or whatever, is a good way to kick off the relationship. Other than that, late model stuff we've been seeing more and more get pushed through. I think there's some feeling that that's not going to be as risky as, say, some of the 60s and sports cars that we've seen maybe cool off a little bit. People might be holding those out of a little bit of fear. But that's what we're seeing at least.
We're being a little dour, but we've had some freaking crazy results, Zach, recently.
Oh, I know.
Crazy, right?
The 928 result from maybe a month ago now.
Oh, gosh. And I don't think that's been brought up. Was it over 200 grand? It was deep into the six figs, right? It's been a while since I looked at that.
We sold a 928 GTS 5-speed for $232,000.
I keep getting asked about like what we feel about the general market because of what's happening the macro side, right? And the word tariffs coming up and such. But it is sort of shocking to see sale through rate is still over 80%. still $1 million cars in a way that things weren't happening just a few months ago.
I feel like we had $1 million sales like three days in a row this week or something like that, or last week.
Senna just sold yesterday. A few others have gone through. I mean, second gen Ford GTs regularly are knocking on that door.
We've had a run of Singers.
Singers.
A backlog of Singers almost.
Yeah, there'll never be a Singer on BAT.
I know, famous quote from well-meaning, but I would put her in the impolite camp person at an event saying there would never be a Singer on BAT.
That's right. We can't beat him off with a
To be fair, there wasn't a Singer on BAT that year.
Yep, that's right. But now there's almost always one.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't do this, but it would be great if she somehow got subscribed to the Singer model page alerts.
Zach's on fire today. Any other notable trends, guys? I've got some interesting podcast listener feedback and some questions for you from listeners that I'm excited to hit you with.
We hit different points in every year where it's my favorite feeling, where sellers have pretty reasonable expectations and are motivated to sell, and there's a lot of buyers.
Yeah.
Where things just feel smooth and are working well, and sellers are stoked because they're getting good results for their cars, and buyers are stoked because the rare, interesting, or whatever their site's set on is popping up regularly. So it feels calmer than the news cycle would lead you to believe.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Hugely more calm, which feels so weird when you're feeling like what's happening.
I know. We have these conversations and I feel like we're always like trying to like blow smoke and make our business seem successful. This is just really happening right now.
And you can see it yourself. Like you don't need to really even ask.
Totally.
You can just look at what.
And we're at record volume. We had 1,100 auctions live this week, which is the first time that's ever happened. So we're doing this while also seeing record numbers. Amazing. Well, thanks for talking that out, guys. We've gotten some cool feedback and some cool questions from
Any
folks.
uncool feedback?
No, it's been a while since I had one of those. There were some thoughts on my interview style a couple months ago. Too much talking. I'm conscious of that, by the way, listeners. I know I talk over people.
Well, if you weren't talking, this would just be 45 minutes of silence. We need you, Alec.
I get enthusiastic and I can't help myself.
Zach and I would just start working again.
Totally. I can see you guys are tempted to do it now. We all have our laptops in front of us.
What do you mean start? I've never stopped, Beck.
That's right. I want to start out with a quick shout out. We got a shout out request from Cole. He wanted me to shout out his dad, Neil Helford. Neil is a very regular listener, loves our pods, listens to them multiple times. So shout out to Neil and to his son, Cole. So that was great.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, that was a first one. It's nice to hear we have listeners. So love that. And then a shout out to another listener, Christian, who sent in a really interesting topic that I wanted to hit Randy and Robbie with, but we ended up talking about events so much we didn't get to it. But I think it's a really interesting one. So Christian asked about kind of what he perceived to be an increase in the number of, let's call them like pro sellers. He meant like dealers, power sellers,
brokers,
people selling on behalf of. We have some kind of interesting thoughts on that because the mix between dealer and private parties isn't actually significantly different over the last few years or over our history. But
I think people would be actually surprised to hear what it is.
Totally. But go ahead, Zach.
I know because I look and track this. Do you guys want to guess or do you want me just to share?
I think I know what it is, and I think I already mentioned it to Beck. But I share it with the listeners because it's interesting.
60% private party,
right.
40% dealer.
Right.
And that's been remarkably consistent.
Totally.
That's the part that surprises me most. Not that it's 60-40, but that in fact it's been like that for a long time now.
Well, one of the things we often hear is like, oh, back when Bring a Trailer only sold project cars, right? Or that was the origin of the site. And as I think we've talked about on the pod before, that's not actually true. Randy was featuring interesting, nice cars all the way from the beginning, 18 years ago, right? And so similarly, we've always had a mix of private parties and dealers as part of the auction business. And I think maybe where some of the perception that this has changed comes from is that the kind of level of presentation has changed. And some of that has to do with our very visible repeat sellers like Anthony Serra, 1600 Veloce, like Matt Crandall, 911R, like Rob Dietz, Wob Cars. Like those guys have really elevated things and changed. I mean, there's no doubt, Zach, that compared to 9 years ago when we would be like, oh yeah, 30 pictures and no video required.
I was actually a little retarded. I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to share this or not. But do you remember in the office where we had to collectively all agree on the photo minimum?
No, was it 30? We used
before we were like, yeah, 20 to 30, good enough. If you go back and you filter oldest to newest, there's some pretty sad, small, skimpy galleries.
Yeah. So the presentation has definitely changed, and power and repeat sellers have changed that, but that makes it so that a private party seller increases. And white glove has had an effect on all kinds of things have had an effect. There's no doubt that Bring It trailers, the way we present cars, has changed the way cars get presented in general on the internet.
There's also the fact that the higher dollar cars that we now have on the site that we may not have had back in the day are more likely to be offered by professional sellers. And those are the cars that often get hotter. They end up on car blogs, they end up in your social media feed. And so even though the volume of cars that are affordable probably has not gone up or gone down, the likelihood of you seeing it maybe has gone down.
But man, I feel like all that's changed since 2015, 10 years earlier. The Instagram car and prepping your listing and Ryan Friedman rapping in front of his GT3 RS, none of that was happening 10 years ago. This is all like recent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is changing, and then it changes the way everyone changes as the kind of base level of what is expected of you changes, right? Like it used to be very rare. We kind of didn't know what to do with videos. It was rare to have one. And now it's like almost a requirement to have at least a startup and a walk
now it's
around.
just included with your Plus.
You totally, that's part of your thing. Totally. But it used to be, I mean, I remember in the early days, we're like, oh, this guy gave us a video. What do we do with this? I guess we embed it or we put it.
We tell that guy to buckle his seatbelt as he's flying through the school zone at 65. Do you remember that 996 Turbo?
I sure do. I remember some other notable ones too. The interesting ones are where the commenters start to judge the seller on their driving habits. The other piece of Christian's question was, is there a change in how the community interacts with power sellers, which is another interesting discussion topic too. I think our community is famous for being, I don't know if cantankerous is the right word, for asking lots of questions. And I think that's kind of regardless of who the seller is. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so in the sense of asking the questions initially, but as far as the standards that they hold of the person, I think the community is often more patient if someone's like original owner, private party seller who's never had a sale before on BAT. I've even seen it where the community will comment after 2-3 days saying, hey, seller, you might be new here. You might want to be engaging with this and answering questions or adding these photos that have been requested days ago. Whereas with a dealer, I don't see that happening as much. But at the same time, dealers are usually far more proactive to begin with.
I think one thing that's changed a lot, and we even have the function right on that says people can subscribe to alerts from a specific seller. There's people listing in such volume and doing such a good job that you just want to see what they come back with.
100%.
And all of these accounts we're talking about have developed their own online personas that people are interested in following and have social media presence as a result, and a constant roll of fantastic photos and cool cars because of their listing volume.
That's so well said, Zach. And to my mind, that's why I think it's very easy to perceive that there's a greater number of those people, right? Because, and you kind of said this too, Beck, right? Because those folks make such an impact. You know, Bill Noon, a former guest of this podcast, Symbolic International, tells these huge tales in his listings, and people love that. There are people who want to just hear what Bill Noon has to say and, you know, tell these amazing stories for either from his past or the past of the cars that he's listing.
Subscribing to alerts for new auctions from certain sellers is such a phenomenal feature, because I think there's some people out there who are just actually much more likely to not just even bid or buy, but to also just comment on and engage with that specific seller because of their expectations with them, because of their history, because
you've
of
got
their
white glove sellers like that, where it's like people follow them specifically on the trailer.
Yes. And that's something that I've even talked to those sellers about, like encouraging people, like in your comments, you should encourage people, or maybe even link to your user page, suggesting people to subscribe for the next auction coming from your shop.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, 911R does such a phenomenal job with his lead photo. I want to see that in my inbox
100%.
for every one that pops up.
100%.
I might not even click over the listing. You might just see a new desktop background, though.
Exactly. You see people asking for that from some of these folks, right? Like, give me that so I can have it as my desktop,
It's
right?
part of why you sent your NSX to it, because you just wanted those pics forever.
Exactly why. Anthony Sarah, 600 Veloce does those amazing driving shots. Driver Source was an early one to do those. Remember those amazing in-motion flying shots, which I think you've explained is very hard to do. So you're almost showing skill just by the lead photo.
I'm still trying to think of a good way to memorialize the JDM collection we did with Matt Ivanhoe a few years ago, and they did that phenomenal video. Do you remember that?
The PlayStation
where you're
video.
playing the video game,
Yeah.
So cool.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. Such good content.
How do I get that playing on a reel in my house when I walk in?
I was talking to somebody the other day, maybe it was Ryan Huber when he was doing the staff meeting. He's like, the photos and videos that are just on BAT is like one of the most, if not the greatest, like collection of kind of car photos anywhere.
For a long time, there still is obviously the Bring a Trailer YouTube channel, which for a long time was what we were using to host people's videos, and it was all unlisted. It has since been essentially re-released as the BAT Vault.
Yeah.
Because there's just like awesome cold start videos of De Tomaso's and whatever that is just a fun thing to go see
100%.
or go through. And I know our team goes through that and pulls things for our social media promotion
Correct.
as well. But just to have that deposit of cool videos, photos, but it's tough to find it. You have to have curators who are like
190,000 closed auctions. We just crossed that number today. So there's a lot to search through. Oh, man. Anyway, I thought it was a really smart question, and it is interesting. And I would say that you mentioned, Beck, that folks have patience with commenters, have more patience with somebody who has a long history with the car. I would also argue that they have patience with repeat sellers who are a known quantity. And by the way, some of our repeat sellers are not dealers necessarily, right? They're either selling on behalf of, or they're actually, we have people who have their own collections. They're selling their own cars. They buy and sell their own cars.
And also at that point, it's confidence inspiring as a buyer to see this person's sold over 1,000 cars.
Absolutely.
Clearly a trustworthy and easy person to work with. So
absolutely,
that helps a lot as well.
100%.
Yeah, it completely goes both ways. I think that there's sometimes some animosity to the idea of people are centralizing some of the wealth of the car selling community, right? They sort of have a false notion of the history of the site, but they're like, this used to be a communal thing. We were all taking part of this. Now this person's dominating it. When in fact, there's obviously a huge benefit from professionalism and experience that those people.
I mean, the volume, we have so many cars now, it's easy to imagine that the number of private party sellers is way down. Just like it's easy to imagine. I hear complaints both ways. The only cars left on BAT are fancy cars, right? So that's all it is. I saw a comment like that today on Reddit, which is like totally not true. And also you hear all the time, they just accept crappy cars now. It's all zero. So like, that's actually, I think, kind of healthy. It means that there's perceptions on both ends, and BAT has a tendency to take a beating sometimes, and I'm actually fine with that.
Everybody's
right down the middle.
full of hate.
Totally on the internet, for sure. Anyway, to your point, Zach, yes, I think that's true.
Okay, well, I want to ask you, Alex, now that your NSX is firmly gone, have you had any phantom limb situations where you go to reach for the keys to the NSX, or here's a great opportunity to drive it? Oh, I want to take the NSX out. And then you remember, oh, shoot.
Yes,
sold it.
that is happening. The latter, not the phantom limb part, but the, ooh, man, that car was good at some things, and I don't have another car to do that particular thing.
How are we going to fill that void for you?
It's a great question. If Leno's Law had passed 308 GTV with carbs, but that's not going to pass smog. Also, don't think that would be as good. I need a really good road trip car that also feels cool to be in. I spent most of a drive back from San Luis Obispo when my youngest son was napping in the back thinking about this, and I actually couldn't think of many good alternatives.
What was on your list?
SVO Mustang is on my list, which is, the turbocharged.
Oh, I know. That's why
Volkswagen.
I'm looking so confused at a car that's good to road trip and you'd feel cool in.
Well, now I feel less cool, as always, when I talk to Zach. I shouldn't have led with that one. I don't know why I kept coming back to it. Randy and I have been talking about those a lot, and I just really like Fox bodies, and I really have been missing another car that I'd love to be in the highway on was my Turbo Coupe. And so I've been missing that. You guys are both laughing at me.
I'm just laughing because you can go have the same experience at Hertz and just go rent an EcoBoost Mustang.
Oh, dude, no. Fox bodies totally do. Like, it's an old car. Like,
I'm messing with you.
Yeah. But it is kind of the same thing. Mustang 65, 66, or 67, 68 Mustang is another one that it's still like way up at the top of the list. A bunch of different varieties, Shelby or otherwise, right? I think would be a really fun highway car. But then you lose a lot of those conveniences, right? That's a much less comfortable car.
I think your test of what would be a car that I would feel comfortable taking to a BAT alumni event, but would require several hour drive to get there.
Yeah.
Like those two things, you'd feel at home at that kind of car show, but would also require several hours such that it needs to be comfortable enough. It needs to be smooth enough. It can't be.
Being a little bit older is good too. Like I felt lame driving the yellow GT3 to the start of the Cal Mule. Like that felt like I need to go hide this over on the side. Even though there are a lot of cars that are in fact, every car was pretty much more valuable than that car that was on the event. It just didn't
Well, at least unlike your SVO Mustang, it didn't get towed. That would be a tough one to roll up to that event.
I so regret saying that to you now, but it's true. Okay, so here was
I love it. It's just so easy to make.
Here was the actual criteria that I was thinking of. So like I'm just not going to happen in 2 weeks from now. But the actual thing I want to do, and I've talked to you about this for sure before, Zach, is I want to drive across the country, coast to coast. I've wanted to do that my whole life. I wanted to do it before I was 16. I wanted to do it in my car Mangia. That's one of the things I was thinking about when I was working on that car as a teenager. And I just couldn't think, like most of the cars that would be comfortable for that aren't cool enough in my brain to do it in. Like I don't want to do it in like a automatic Audi S4 or something.
But that's the natural state of practicality, right? It's why the minivan, which is really the answer for having a family, is still something I can't have. It's too practical.
Too far apart. Like the Venn diagram of reliability and comfort for a cross-country drive, but also something that people would think is cool in every town you drive into is so small.
But inherently makes it not cool.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, the NSX is like probably the ultimate answer.
The NSX is a great one, but I think both of your own biases are interfering.
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah, we're too privileged here at BAT where we think cars that are so special, like Beck, I'm sure you're a little desensitized to Ford GTs at this point, right? But could you imagine doing a cross country in a Ford GT?
It would be amazing.
It'd be unreal.
That would be amazing. There was a story many years ago about a guy, I don't remember if it was like tragedy or midlife crisis or what, but he sold everything, like house, possessions, and he bought a Gallardo and he drove it 200,000 miles just driving around the country. And when he needed an oil change or a major service, he would just stop in a city.
Now I can unveil something embarrassing about myself now that I'm also coming to grips with my midlife crisis. I've been looking at Gallardos nonstop.
Gallardo 6-speed is very high on the list of things I would want. I actually even haven't said it on the pod, I don't think, because I think they're kind of undervalued. A gated Gallardo.
It looks so good. And the pre-09s have the better firing order V10, and it just sounds like nothing else.
Have you driven one before?
I have.
Yeah, they're little. Like they're smaller than the 911
inside.
They are. And I actually don't know how they fit a clutch pedal. The only one I drove was a paddle shift, and the pedal box was already bad.
Yeah, the dead pedal feels like where a clutch should be. So I'm sure it's cramped in there.
Yeah. But it's such a cool car.
And the feasibility is pretty poor.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I'll just get the Spider and really look like the ultimate tool. Or
couldn't be done. It has to be a coupe for me.
I know, man.
Well, I want you guys to keep working on this one. Like, what's the right car for that application? I think 308 would be really cool. Remember the guy who took the 308 all the way to the top of Alaska? I think he bought it on BAT. Remember that Instagram story? I wish I could remember what his username was, but he bought a 308 GTS and he drove the Alcan Highway and drove to like Nome or something. He went as far north as roads would go in a 308, which is pretty sick.
Not bad. Yeah, any 911 pre-1998 basically fits the bill, but it's kind of a boring choice.
That's what it is for me.
But a 930 isn't. 930.
Oh, gosh. That's a good one.
Yeah, but I know. You got to have that 5-speed if you're doing long distance with it.
Probably.
Alex would be fine with 4-speed.
I would also want something that is kind of good if you did want to take a little windy road on the side. But a lot of this would be interstate driving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, SVO is so stupid, but still it's in my brain. Anyway.
I don't think I'll ever do it, but I've been having huge SLS fantasies, really playing into the stereotypes. I think that would be such a
really good
cross-country cruiser.
Yes. What are those? What's a SLS with miles? Is that under 150?
No, they're pretty bottomed at 150. Oh, unless you want a roadster, my good sir.
Negative.
Get you a nice little cap off the top when you fall off the interstate.
Negative.
No?
Negative. And man, as soon as it's the thing that doesn't have the gull wing doors, it's so much less cool too, whatever that is.
I just am imagining myself parallel parking it in the city
and
then opening the door onto the curb and just scraping a ton of paint off the door.
That's amazing. I love those cars. Their rear transaxle. When they came out, I was like obsessed with them.
Same transmission as the 458.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
But it's connected to the front engine.
They both have some gearbox issue that you got to keep up with.
Gosh, I'm sure they have lots of issues. You like those cars?
The Goldwing SLS, yes, for sure. We have one live on White Glove right now.
There we go. Get a play.
I'm into the black edition. I love just that car's kind of classy and understated, and then they just throw this factory Mansory look body kit on it. It's just so ridiculous.
That's actually, so you're a pro. It's probably my least favorite of all the black series. I love the black
It's just
series.
so ridiculous.
It
looks like
out
it
of control.
shouldn't be a factory.
It has like a fixed wing on it, right? Does it? Yeah, okay.
An enormous
You could
price
get that
jump
crazy
too.
yellow
But
color.
a huge one.
I like the SL Black Series. That's because they fixed the
65.
roof. Yeah, they fixed the roof
those
in
are
place.
cool.
Yeah. I wonder if a CLK Black would be a cool car for cross country. It's
That
a
could
little
be good.
It's a little under the radar. Like it doesn't look, it's not that much different than a regular. Like a lot of Mercedes are kind of flared fender matte finish now.
Yeah, I like that idea.
That's an interesting one.
R129.
I don't know. Maybe we have a very interesting R129 coming up. It's going to be live on the site pretty soon.
It's funny when I see an R129 outside of work, I do go, man, those are sharp.
They're
cars."
so good
They
looking.
look phenomenal.
Yeah. I honestly, the thing that's making me hesitate is like, I worry about famously like Mercedes from that era is supposed to be so reliable. And like everyone cries tears when two of my buddies have bought one and one of our colleagues, and they're just weeping all the time.
Okay, a little slow. I've also been having deep fantasies about one of these 2.3 or 2.5 16 valve
Oh, yeah.
fans would eat up highway miles, be comfortable, look cool.
I wish the crazy Evo one, which I've always loved, wasn't so expensive. Yeah. That would be a really good one.
Well, I wish you just had more money so you could afford it.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, if I had more money, the Ford GT is the right answer.
Oh, really?
A first gen
You just
Ford
don't have
GT
that
with
much
miles.
luggage space, which makes it tough. But if you're solo trip,
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to want to come with me. I've had these fantasies of having my
I would
various
just get a
children
different
meet
car.
me at various points. Like they're not going to want to do the whole thing, but like if I get my wife to come to. So when I was a kid, when I was 4, my sister was like a newborn basically, and my parents and my sister and I, we took the Volkswagen van again all the way across the country. And then my mom and 6-month-old sister flew home from DC, and my dad and I cannonballed back. I was 4 or 5 years old. And I still have memories from that trip. We went to the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, which I would love to go back to. So some version of that would be interesting. I've never looked in the trunk of a Ford GT. There's nothing up front, right?
there's not really. I think you can maybe use a factory soft suitcase up there.
It was like a factory duffel, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
Interesting. My wife tells a story about a restaurant tour she knew whose husband had a Ferrari, and they would mail their luggage ahead of time to wherever they were going.
That's a thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can totally do that.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you can. There was a guy who had a little tiny jet that was like a 1-seater, had like a 200-pound thrust engine. And he's like, the difference between max weight and me and full fuel is 5 pounds. So he's like, the only thing I can carry is a credit card, and I just buy whatever I need.
Man, he's a big meal away from a major accident.
Totally.
That center of
Totally.
gravity is moving the
Totally. I think it was a BD jet. Anyway, whatever it was cool. All right, boys, great discussion. Anything else before we part ways?
No, we're going to regroup on your road trip.
I want you all to
We'd
chew
like
on it, and we'd also love to hear what listeners have to say about that. If they
Yeah, I
have
want to hear
ideas.
more user questions. This is great. We got a few
Totally.
coming in.
We need to do another 1 year, Zach. I was chewing on doing that last night, but I'd love to have you two in the Battle Dome again, the two folks who win every time they're on. And then would love to do another. I have some ideas, Zach. I won't say them here, but I
Okay,
have some
I'm gonna-
ideas for another game that's affordable to 21st
Okay,
century
I was
performance
gonna-
adjacent, because that one got a lot of feedback. So we need to do more kind of in that
I was
vein.
going to force you to do a repeat.
Yeah. There's some other ideas out there. And again, we'd love to hear from users on what they think too. But yeah, people like it when we do lists. They would probably like it if we did a list every single episode.
I think questions about the inner workings of BAT, like why do we decide to do certain things, is a great one for us to talk about, pull back the curtain a little bit and dispel maybe some rumors is a fun one too.
Always happy to do that. Love to do that. Always need Zach for that one. So
Well, I'm back in town. I'm ready to pod. So let's grid up.
let's pod up. Thanks, boys.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, we would love to hear your feedback. That goes to podcast@bringatrailer.com. We'll catch you next time.